Modern gaming has made me very cynical about any AAA release because it just seems like a bunch of these companies just don't learn from their mistakes at all. But at the very least, it still seems like there's always one or two great games to release that everyone's raving about. $70 was a huge pill to swallow, but I do think we still have tons of fun experiences this gen. Astrobot, Elden Ring, Black Myth Wukong, Spider-Man 2, Indiana Jones, Metaphor ReFantasio, Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, I can go on. This generation has a lot of issues, but every year there's always one or even two big hits that reminds me there's still passion in this industry. Even this year, Expedition 33 has been the talk of the town recently, and for good reason. I just started the game and I'm already gripped to this experience. Gaming as a medium is still great and at a high quality, even if we're starting to get more misses. We still get amazing new titles every year that shakes up the industry. So why is everything going to shit?
Hey, Peggy, let me talk to him one time. Hold up.
AAA gaming has always been problematic. Like, there was never a true golden age of AAA because companies have always been trying sleazy stuff to get in your wallets. But maybe because now I'm growing up with those sleazy practices, or maybe because companies are just being way more blatant about it now, but it just feels like this generation is so much worse with all of those. And that can be seen with today's topic. We are starting to reach a breaking point in gaming where everything is just too much money. For example, if you want a new console, well, for starters, that's $500 for the system. But now the industry standard is $70 for a game. So you're just paying essentially $600 for a new console and a new game, which for most people would be enough. But what if you want to play online with someone? Well, that's an extra $70 for the official headset, along with $80 a year for the bare minimum subscription service to play online. And if you want new exclusives every year, it might be $60, it might be $70. Who's to say? All of this just to play the same console Concord was released for, and you can't even play that anymore. This generation has been extremely greedy because while we don't have stuff like loot boxes anymore, we have stuff like microtransactions and the rise of live service experiences. I don't play many live service games, but comparing something like Marvel Rivals, where it doesn't feel the need to charge you for every little thing and you can still have a lot of fun without spending a single dime on anything, to Multiverses, you know, the fighting game where you have to pay for every single character, including their skins, in this fighting game. Which at that point, why wouldn't I just buy Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl? They come with all the characters. Why wouldn't I just buy Super Smash Bros? They're basically ripping off it. How the hell with Marvel Rivals, I don't have to pay for any of the characters? I can just get them all for free. But with Multiverses, they don't even give you an option to own all the characters in like a special bundle. You have to pay for them individually. I know they're two different games, but still.
Also, I was gonna use Overwatch as an example, but apparently they made all their characters free.
But there's also the confusion of like, how can live services be paid experiences and they still have stupid stuff like microtransactions and stuff? Skull and Bones was a $70 experience, yet you can pay $100 more for 13,000 gold coins. How much money do you need from me? Why can't I just earn these coins naturally? Why do I have to cheat my way through it? Speaking of which, Ubisoft, you are not safe from me! Because while I haven't played Assassin's Creed Shadows yet, I don't care how good the game is. $50 for its in-game currency? For a single-player game? Why don't you just shoot me instead? That is so wild to me. With that money, you could just buy a normal game. Maybe it's just my mind, but I feel like when I pay for an experience, I want the full experience. Stuff like costumes or DLC, that's fine. I don't really mind all of that. But for a currency in-game, especially for single-player games, that is just wild to me. Like, how in the big 2025 are we still dealing with greedy microtransactions? But sadly, they are no longer the biggest issue with gaming nowadays. So the PS5. Basically the MVP of the generation right now. And it's really the MVP because you're not buying a Series X for... Just get a PS5. But because Xbox gave up before the generation even started, Sony has gotten a little too comfortable of being number one. Hey kids, do you want to spend $700 on a system I have to squint my eyes to tell the difference of? Well, you need the PS5 Pro! I remember when the PS4 Pro came out and I was so jealous at people who had it because there was a difference. Yeah, not every PS4 game can run at like 4K 60 FPS, but 4K 30 still was impressive at the time. And at the very least, it still looked like an upgrade. Or at least I think it was an upgrade. I don't know, maybe it's rose tinted glasses there. For $200 more than the base PS5 model, you can't even hit 60 for some of the games. The PS4 Pro was $400 at launch, which was the same price of what the PS4 was. So even if there wasn't that big of a difference, at the very least, it had some sort of value. And I can understand if someone would want to pick that up over the PS4. But for $200 more, why would I ever get a PS5 Pro over a PS5? Because at that point, if I really wanted that much more power, I'll just get a PC. Yeah, it's a bit more expensive, but like, do I really feel like paying $200 more for a PS5 Pro? I get it that tech gets more expensive as time goes on, but I feel like companies back then would just wait till it gets more affordable, because you do want to turn a profit with these stuff, you know? Like the Game Boy Advance was supposed to be this super console, but Nintendo wanted to cut it down a bit because it was just too expensive to produce, plus would not be that profitable. So they waited a bit and even cut down some of the features.
Don't worry, we'll get to you.
We didn't need a PS5 Pro. While yes, some games like Jedi Survivor struggles on PS5, that's not the fault at the game more than it's a fault of the garbage optimization. And I get it that crunch exists and Survivor really got the worst of it, but even after launch, I feel like Survivor runs so poorly on this console. Maybe Respawn didn't have enough time to go back and optimize the game, or for some reason they couldn't go back and optimize the game, but I also don't feel like a PS5 Pro version should be the solution. I'm sure it runs great, but it also shouldn't be the solution to garbage optimization. I shouldn't have to pay $700 for the game to work okay. There's weak hardware that's being pushed to its limits, and then there's hardware that's capable just being misused and not giving your developers enough time to optimize said experience. Speaking of weak hardware, the Nintendo Switch. The Switch 2 has been one of the things I've been looking forward to the most this year. I've been sucked into handheld gaming for a while. I've been playing a lot of my Vita, 3DS, and now my deck. I love handheld, and I love my Switch before I sell it for cash. My biggest issue with the Nintendo Switch, and get ready if you never heard this criticism before, it's too weak! Even first-party games struggle to hit the 30 mark. So the Switch 2 to me is very exciting, especially since the Nintendo Switch 2 presentation was just showing this thing's power. I wasn't that big of a fan of a lot of the third-party showings, mainly because I was eager to see a lot of the first-party stuff, but I was still beyond impressed with the hardware, and it exceeded my expectations. I think Mario Kart, and especially DK Bonanza, looks phenomenal. Everything looks great, I say, with 27 bullet wounds. $450 for the console is fine. $400 was the place that most people were hoping for, and for me, I was also expecting $400, but I think $450 isn't bad in my opinion. Especially since you're getting a lot with the Switch 2. You're getting a console that's really damn powerful for a handheld. So I think for the specs, it makes sense why it's $450. Not too cheap, but not too expensive.
Now for everything else.
Say if you want everything from the Switch 2 haul. Well, that's $400 for the console, $35 for a simple charging kit, $40 for the simple case and screen protector, $60 for an SD card express, and get this, $85 for a controller! What's wrong with this one? This still works? I'm not paying nearly $90 for a controller, are you insane? But it gets so much worse. Oh, you want a new set of Joy-Cons? Okay, that's another $95. Oh, but you want to play GameCube games with the GameCube controller? Well, not only you need to pay $50 a year for the Nintendo Switch Online Pro in order to simply play GameCube games, but to also order the controller, which is an extra $65. And I still haven't bought a game. With all that being said, how much are the games on Switch 2? Well, for upgrades, it's a simple $10, which makes sense. It's industry standard at this point, so whatever. But however, how much are the games themselves? $70 for Donkey Kong? Okay, that's fair. Tears of the Kingdom basically showed Nintendo that they probably should start charging more for their bigger experiences. And since the Switch 2 is gonna have a tons of those, I guess it makes sense if that's the industry standard. What the hell is that? No.
No!
No!
No, you can't! I won't do it! I won't do it! You can't make me! You can't make me!
$80 for Mario Kart. $80 for Mario Kart. $80 for any game is already too much, but $80 for Mario Kart? Are you insane? There's no other words to describe this other than pure greed. $80 for any game is already too much, but for Mario Kart, it's just greed, because you know what they're trying to do. They're trying to normalize the price so they can be able to get away with this for any other Nintendo game. So why not start with the biggest franchise that we own that kids also play, which means more money in our pockets? And look, I'm probably not going to pay for Mario Kart. I'm just going to do it like I do with most games I don't want to buy and just steal my dad's copy.
Thank you. What the
But like, I feel like this is too much, right? You're not only pricing out a bunch of people from the game because they can only afford every one or two $70 games a year, let alone $80. But to make it your first entry in a series that hasn't gotten a new entry in years, it's just kind of scummy, isn't it not? To make your first entry in nearly a decade, Jesus, in your best-selling franchise that's already guaranteed to do a lot of money, and to make it more money than it needs to be, that's just too much. By the way, counting everything we bought for the Switch 2, not counting the camera, no one's buying that. I'm not buying that. That is altogether $960! $960! I may have sold all my family members just to buy a Nintendo Switch 2, but at the very least I get to play Cyberpunk 2077 on the Switch too! Do you see what I mean when I say gaming's becoming way too expensive? It's just super deflating, man. Because it's just like, is everything just gonna cost this much now? Are we just gonna have to break the bank with every single new game release? At least other companies aren't jumping ship and making their games so expensive, which is just a blessing in disguise. What do you mean Microsoft has already raised all their prices? Are you insane? According to Business Insider, Phil Spencer states, "We went through COVID. We found ways of getting more money per player. I think at some point, you've reached a peak on that. And frankly, it can go to some places that are manipulated, that I'm not a fan of." Microsoft is raising prices on Xbox consoles, controllers, in games worldwide. Microsoft is on some crazy stuff if they think their games are even worth $80 with the way they come out nowadays. Arguably their most iconic game of this generation was $30. Shut down the studio. Is gaming just gonna become a luxury thing? Are we just gonna price out on everything? Well, not exactly. Yes, a lot of the changes that are going on is really bad, but we still have cheaper experiences that blow my mind and really impress me. Exposition 33 was a game that I mentioned earlier, and I still genuinely think it's an incredible experience for $50, man. I am genuinely surprised that it's a $50 experience because if you told me this was a AAA game, I would have 100% believed you. You get a pretty beefy 30-hour turn-based RPG that feels like an evolution of that genre's gameplay, with a story that has so much intrigue so far for $50. That is great. Another example of this is South of Midnight. This game definitely has a lot less cultural relevance than Expedition 33, but I still believe it's a really solid experience. The story is easily my favorite part of the game, being a really gripping tale, and the combat and gameplay isn't too bad neither. While the combat won't blow your mind, the platforming is genuinely really fun and it reminds me a lot of Psychonauts 2. And the visuals, oh my god, the visuals are beautiful. If you're looking for a platformer very similar to something like Psychonauts 2 or really any AAA platformer nowadays, I genuinely recommend South of Midnight. And it's for $40 too, which in my opinion is a great deal for this game. I mentioned these two games because they're both great games with both really affordable prices. They're both very much worth the price and I really recommend them. You can make great experiences without breaking the bank. Hell, if you enjoy Fallout, I've heard nothing but great things about Atomfall. And that game is also $50, which is crazy. I like buying indie games and AA experiences because I feel like a lot of them can can be impressive. And I think going forward, those experiences are going to be very much valued if this continues, if it's not already. But I know this won't change anything. Buying these games won't change these companies' minds, and they're just gonna continue to raise the price. But I still think it will eventually get better. People will eventually be sick and tired of it, and eventually people will just stop buying these games. Eventually people will stop rewarding these companies with revenue and start going for other places for their gaming pleasures. It's gonna have to go to rock bottom for it to get better, but it will eventually get better, sooner or later. In conclusion, support smaller scale indie titles, fuck you Ubisoft, and play Expedition 33.
Subscribe or else GTA 6 is going to be like $250.